Okay, we are going to start this morning with a trivia question. So could everybody put your phones down and your eyes up? Are we ready? Who can tell me what the most successful video game that Nintendo ever released was? Just yell it out.
Pac-Man.
Haven't heard it yet? Still haven't heard it?
Zelda, Ocarina of Time.
The Legend of Zelda, that's right. This amazing game was released back in 1986 when I was just 9 years old, and was by far my favorite game of all time. Still to this day, it is their most money-producing game that they ever sold. There were over 75 million copies sold worldwide. Now, for those of you that have never heard of The Legend of Zelda, this was a role-play game with the goal of rescuing the Princess Zelda from the evil Ganon. And to do this, you had to take your character. Anybody remember the character's name? Link. You're a Zelda pro right here. You had to take Link through many different worlds, solving puzzles and fighting battles. This was not the type of game that you could breeze through in a couple days or even a couple weeks. This game made me realize for the very first time how important it was to back something up. Now let's stay back in 1986 for a moment. I was just 9 years old and I was completely addicted to playing this game. That's all I wanted to do. Now The Legend of Zelda was powered by the first generation Nintendo system. Anybody have that? It was super cool, right? This was the introduction of the Super Mario Brothers franchise. We also had fun games like Excite Bike, Duck Hunt. Who remembers Duck Hunt? Man, that was my jam. Now, back in 1986, this first generation Nintendo system was the cutting edge of home video game entertainment. But the system itself was a bit buggy. If you remember, cartridges would get dusty and they wouldn't load or they'd lock up in the middle of play, right? Or if you accidentally hit the game console, it would freeze your game, or even worse, just reset it altogether. But my all-time favorite, which brought tears to my eyes many, many times, was when I was in the middle of a game and my mother would just come in and shut it off. She was so mean. This is why it was so important to save your game progress often. 1986, 9 years old, was the first time I ever created a backup of something that was important to me. This is the actual save screen from the game. Notice the extra caution message, so you save it properly, right? There are three main reasons why you need to have a backup plan in place. Reason number one, it saves you money. According to Fortune magazine, companies spend over $1.7 trillion per year on data loss. Reason number two, it saves you time. Recovering lost data and design can take a massive amount of time. And then reason number three, it shows how smart you are. This is a fact. If you are in a room with 10 other website owners, and you are the only one in that room that has a backup and restore strategy for your site, you are automatically the smartest person in that room. Now, how many of you are attending this talk this morning because you do not currently have a backup and restore strategy for your site? This is great. So glad you're here. And I guarantee that by the end of this, you're going to be smarter than you were before my very first slide. Okay? So we live in what I like to call a high-tech, low-touch society. And what I mean by that is the things that support our daily task require technology. And this technology is a collection of data that's specific to each one of us. Now, if this data gets lost or corrupted, it can completely wreak havoc on our lives, right? Some examples of this specific data that we use every day that if lost or corrupted would cripple us. What about email? Wow, can you imagine? I mean, some days we kind of wish our email would just explode, right? But if it did, it would cripple us. What about our social media accounts? Many of us use that to generate referrals and grow our business. What about our phone contacts? Yeah, people still actually call people. If all of your phone contacts were gone, what would happen? How would you feel? Text messages. What about your calendar systems? Right? How many people are still using paper calendars? Nobody raised their hand. Technology, right? Mobile apps. We have many mobile apps that we depend on. What happens if these get lost or corrupted? Some work systems. Payroll. What about education? My daughter's in 6th grade. All of her assignments are online. Everything. She doesn't even have books. She's in something called the iPad Academy. Technology, right? So with all of this data that is specific to each and every one of us, let's for a moment think about some of the worst things that can happen. Okay? What if we lost our phone? Ooh, just get a little heart pain saying it. What if our computer crashed and all of our files and programs were gone? What if your website became infected and it altered the design or the content? What if your website was completely deleted? You see, the goal here is to make sure that we are prepared for the worst. And doing that will ensure to limit our fears and our worries. You see, having a backup plan in place is critical to living a digital life of no worries. So let's get a little bit more specific, right? What type of backup are we talking about? The title of this talk is Backup Before You Crack Up, but what type of backup is it? Are we talking about police backup? Partner, right? No. Are we talking about a power supply backup? No, not at all. Are we talking about a wingman on a blind date as backup? No, we're not. We're talking about website backup, and more specifically, WordPress website backup. The defined approach to creating a successful backup and restore strategy for your WordPress site can be accomplished with 3 actions. The first action is you have to fully understand how important it is to be in place. This needs to be a religion to you. You need to believe it deep, deep down in your core that having a backup plan in place is a must. The second action is you need to select the right tool to execute it. And then the third and most important action is you need to automate that process. Don't manage it, automate it. So throughout this presentation, you're going to see some green underlined text. These are all hyperlinks that are going to take you off to more information. These slides are actually already available at this URL, and I will also put this up at the end of the presentation. So you don't have to mad dash to copy that down now. So, is there anybody out here that suffers from extreme nightmares? I'm talking about those types of dreams that are so real, so vivid, so scary that you can't even wake up from them. Anybody? Okay, we got one. My wife suffers from it. Like, she goes into panic attacks and she literally can't wake up. This is exactly how it feels if you are in a situation where you need a backup file, but it doesn't exist. It is an extreme nightmare that you cannot wake up from. Now, I would like for all of you to think of some stories where this has happened. Maybe personally, or you've heard something where you needed a backup file and it didn't exist. And if time permits, at the end of this talk, I'd love for you to share those stories with the rest of us, because it just reinforces identifying the importance, right? Who's responsible for backing up your site? Shout it out. He is. Call him. Who's responsible? Yeah, yourself. Unless you're paying somebody to do it, you're the one that's responsible. Okay, so take ownership of that responsibility. What are some of the things that could happen to your site that would require that you have a backup and restore strategy in place? What are some of the things? Hacked? So your site gets hacked. What else? Database corruption. What else? What's a real common one that we see often? Screwing your own site up. Yeah, that's pretty common for sure. I do that all the time. Server crashing. So let's just go through a list of some of them, and we've named most of them. Just simple core updates could cause havoc, right? Theme updates, for sure. Plugin updates, yes, yes, yes. What about conflicts? Developers are not always concerned with how other things work with their development, right? Conflicts, very common. We said hacked. And then the last one here, the most common, we also said it. You want to say it again? What do you think it is? You said it? User error. Number one reason why we need a backup file, right? So when I was 17 years old, I decided to leave school and start my own carpet installation company. I was doing pretty well. In fact, I was doing well enough where I could get my own studio apartment in the north side of Buffalo, New York. Now, North Buffalo was not the worst area in the city, but it certainly wasn't the suburbs. I had a work van that I used every day to haul job supplies and my tools. And when I come home from work, I'd take my tools out of the van and put them in the basement of the building I was renting in. Does anybody know what a basement is? Okay, I always have to ask that in California. Now, during this time period, I was a member of a networking organization that I used to generate referrals and grow my business. There was another gentleman in the group that sold insurance. And one week, he was talking about renter's insurance. So for a very low cost, you could have peace of mind for all of your belongings if you were a renter. This was a no-brainer to me. I signed up, and literally the day after my policy went into effect, the building I was renting in got broken into, and the basement was completely emptied out. My tools were gone, and I was out of business. Now, luckily, because I had insurance, I was able to get some money from the insurance company to rent some tools, and within 45 days, I had a check to reimburse me for the stolen tools. You see, having a backup and restore strategy for your site is like an insurance policy. Insurance is defined as the protection from financial loss. If you are in a situation where you need a backup file and it does not exist, you are in a really ugly place. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. And I've seen the pain and the anguish and the expense that people have had to go through. I don't want that to happen to anybody. So I like to live a little dangerously. Who likes a little danger in their life? Nobody? Come on, we're a fun crowd. A little danger, right? Can't hurt. For example, I like to eat before I go swimming. Do it all the time. I'm not scared of cramps. Danger, I like danger. I like to wash my lights and my darks in the same load. That's dangerous, isn't it? It's efficient, though. I like to stand on the top step of the ladder. I don't care that it says do not step. I do it. Gets me way up there. Danger. Now, before I show you this next slide, I need everybody to take a deep breath, because this is probably the most dangerous thing I do in life. We ready? I like to do my updates and my edits on my live site. He likes danger. I like him. That's dangerous, isn't it? But you see, I'm not scared, because I have a foolproof backup and restore system. And if anything goes wrong, within a matter of seconds, I can turn back time. So it's actually not dangerous at all. It's efficient. So there's different ways that you can create a backup, right? You can manually do it. Does anybody create their backups manually? Sometimes, okay. In some cases, that's the only way you can do it, depending on the situation. Your hosting company may include this with your hosting plan, right? Or for a small fee, you can add it. Does anybody have their hosting company managing their backups? Okay. You can pay somebody to do it. That's easy enough. Is anybody paying somebody to do it? No? Okay. And then the most common is what? You can use a plugin. Yeah. You can use a WordPress plugin, right? There's many out there. So before I dive into this slide, I'm going to share with you a plugin that myself and my team have personally used for many, many years without any issues. I'm talking small sites up to 20 gigabyte sites. No issues. But before I do that, it's important that you understand that my way is not the only way. All of you have been kind enough to give me your attention this morning, and I take that responsibility serious. And I'm here to share my experience with you. So I'm about to show you a plugin that will make creating your backup and restore strategy easy as apple pie. Does anybody want to guess what plugin that might be? Man, I love this guy. I love his shirt too. They never get that on the first guess. Updraft Plus. Now, there are many other backup and restore plugins on the market, right? I'm going to show you a whole list of them in a second. But as I said, I'm here to share with you my experience, and I've used them all. I've never had a problem with this plugin. Over 1 million active installs, WordPress.org, the free version, which is more than sufficient for anything I'm going to talk about here today. But there are 3 things that this plugin can do that no other backup and restore plugin can. There's 3 things. The first one is automatic one-click restore. With one click of the mouse, you can completely restore your site. The second thing is pre-update backups. So anytime that you're going to update your plugins or your theme or even WordPress core, this plugin will automate a backup before that happens. And then the third thing, which is less common to most WordPress installs, is this is the only backup plugin that will back up an encrypted database. And an encrypted database is not very common because we don't need to encrypt our data. But if you're like a health company or you're storing legal records in a database or credit card information, that data needs to be encrypted, and this is the only plugin that will back up that data. Okay? Are there any Updraft Plus users in the room besides the gentleman here? Is there anybody that's never heard of Updraft Plus? Check it out. So there's been a lot of talk about backing up and creating a backup and restore strategy. But I've yet to say what exactly you need to back up, right? So let's think for a moment about the human body. What are the 2 things that the human body must have in order to function? What are they?
Air, blood.
More specific, let's think organs. Close, with blood, heart. What else? Heart and a brain. Got to have those 2 things, right? Some people have brains, but it's not real apparent. But you got to have those 2 things. Now, think about a WordPress site, right? What are the 2 things that are unique to every single WordPress site? I heard content. What else? What? Theme. Database, okay. The database is the heart, right, of your site. It's unique. It stores your content. It stores your settings. And then the other thing that is unique to your WordPress site are the files. These are all the files that reside in the WP content folder, right? And in some installs, there may be files outside of there. But for the majority of WordPress installs, the files that are unique are in your WP content file, right? Or folder. Now, a lot of people will say, what about backing up core and backing up your HT access file and your WP config file? To be honest, the easiest answer to that is those files are not necessarily unique, and they're not hard to find the information that sits in them. So if those got deleted or corrupted, you can recover those easily without having a backup, right? Would we agree on that? Your WP config file, yes, it does have unique database login information in it, but you can get that elsewhere, okay? But the two things that are unique to every install is your database and your files. And as long as you have those, you can live a digital life of no worries. Because if anything happens, you have a backup file to restore, right? So these are some other popular backup plugins. Okay, and we have a free and a paid list here. A lot of the free ones offered a paid option, right? Are there other options out there that you are currently using that are not on this list? Just shout them out.
All in one.
All in one? No. Get?
It only does the file.
Any others? Anybody ever use WordPress? No? WordPress is very powerful. Anybody using Jetpack? But like I said, for the purpose of everything I'm trying to stress the importance of, Updraft Plus free version will do everything you need. It'll automate the process for you so you don't have to manage it. It'll back up the two things that are unique to your site. And then for a small fee, you can get their premium version, which just gives you a whole load of options. Migration tools, remote storage. But free is good. Free is good, right? We like free. You can do it manually. This link will actually show you how to back up your site manually if you want to live dangerously a little bit, right? Say it again? cPanel. So has anybody ever heard of the crockpot method? That's good, because I made it up. It's not a real method. But it'll make sense once I explain it. Think about the way a crockpot works, right? What's the joy of making a meal in a crockpot?
Set it and forget it.
Set it and forget it. Rotisserie. Right? You set it and forget it. You cut up your stuff, you put it in the crockpot in the morning, you go to work for 8 hours, you come home, you feed the family, right? Set it and forget it. Take this same concept and bring it into your backup and restore strategy. Spend some time researching the best tool for your site. Spend some time setting it up, and then forget about it. Unless you need it, right? Crockpot method, set and forget. And this method can actually be pulled into a whole bunch of things that we do on our site and in our businesses and in our life, right? Crockpot method. So again, the three main actions that you need to take in order to create a successful backup and restore strategy is you have to first fully believe how important it is to have in place. I said it needs to be a religion. And for those of us that are not religious, make this your religion. You have to have a backup plan in place. Then spend some time finding the right tool to execute it. I gave you an option that I've used for years and never had a problem. But there are other options that can do the same. And then the third and most important action is you have to automate the process. Don't spend time worrying about it. Set and forget, right? So let's take some time, and hopefully some of you have thought of some stories where you were in a situation where a backup file was needed and didn't exist. Does anybody have a story to tell the rest of us?
Friend of mine, one of the things you want to add in here is you have to watch the location of where you put your backup. It's very important to watch that because if you backed up, let's say, there's the FTP and FTP and other domains, there's an FTP backup. Remit them on different servers because when the server crashes, you lose not only your site but all your backups. That's the only condition, and I've had that happen on one. I made a mistake and did not do that. And when the server crashed, there were all the backups and all the other stuff.
So remote storage is the summary of that story.
Storage, updraft, you can Gmail it to yourself, you can,
Dropbox, Google Drive.
over there, all that stuff. Yeah.
Redundancy is okay in backup. Redundancy is great.
And the other thing is keep multiple backups because sometimes the fix that screwed it up isn't back one, maybe back two, maybe back three backups.
This is a good question for you. How many backups should you keep?
I keep 5.
5?
Depends on how often you back it up.
Answer the question. How many backups do you keep? 5. We got 5. We got 3. I'm a 3 guy. What else? 1. So let me give you the educated answer on this, right? Depending on how often you actually work on your site, should be how often you keep your backups, right? If you're only on your site once a month, you should keep 30 days worth. I'm on my site every day. He is too. That's why he only keeps 3, right? So, because you're never going to know when a problem happened, like you said. You might have to go back 10 days. So the frequency that you're actually working on your site should be the frequency of how many backups you keep. Does that make sense? Another scary story? Extreme nightmare right here, gentlemen.
It goes to verifying your backup. Friend had a backup set up, backed up his database on an hourly basis. He was really paranoid. Didn't think about it. One day he had a crash. I'll just go grab my backup. Turns out the backup program had stopped backing up about 2 weeks prior. He had no database backups for 2 weeks and had to manually recreate all of that missing data.
So a lot of backup plugins, Updraft Plus, they'll actually notify you if any errors occur. So if something doesn't succeed, he would have known, but clearly that notification wasn't there.
He found a little checkbox that would then let him know by email that it succeeded.
I guarantee he never makes that mistake again.
Nope.
What else? Extreme nightmares.
I stopped working for a company and handled the website to run, and 3 months later they called me and told me it was hacked, and I asked them what the backup was, and they didn't have it.
And what'd they have to do?
I had to recreate the website and it was
Good for you.
On the verification of backup, I learned one practice. I learned those have been doing backup, they've been doing that within that application. And it is never written tape.
You should have ran. You should have ran out of there when you saw tapes.
He never verified it.
So somebody told a story one time when I gave this presentation a couple years ago about a fire that happened in their office building. And they were doing remote storage, but it was not in the cloud. It was remotely on one of their servers. And the fire happened in their building and burned everything, so backups were gone. What else? Another nightmare story? No? Yep, we got one here. Is it about Zelda?
No, it's not. It's different though. Mine, I'm kind of new to WordPress and websites, but my backup before the story was my first ever wedding video I ever did, and I lost that. So,
That's sad, yeah.
I don't know, telling somebody that I lost the wedding. That's a good thing.
And for any of you that are in a managed WordPress environment where there's somebody else managing this process for you, make sure you get your hands on it, right? And I'm not talking about managed hosting. I'm talking about perhaps you're working with somebody that is managing the hosting side of your site, but they don't give you any login information. And then one day that person goes away or changes careers or who knows what could happen. This is so common. And then you're stuck with no files, no backup, no nothing. And you have to start over again. Take control, right, of your backup and restore strategy and make sure you have access to it. Okay? Any other stories before we wrap up here? Okay. So what I would love from all of you is to really walk away today with just that strong importance of creating a backup and restore strategy for every single site that you own or every single site that you manage. And when you talk to other WordPress people here at WordCamp today, just ask them, are you backing up your site? How are you doing it? I guarantee that you will always find people that say no. And that's scary, right?
It's opportunity.
It's opportunity. Because it's so easy to actually create this strategy. It's very easy to do, and it doesn't cost you anything either. So as some of the smartest people, not only at this WordCamp, but in the entire WordPress community, can we group together and go out there and make backup a religion? Yes. Amen, right? Amen. Woo! All right, everybody. Thank you for your time, and the slides are at this URL.